Okay, hello and welcome to Viva-Mundo's webinar. Today we are with Audencia Business School and the lovely Benjamin Rathmel, who is here to present to you the pre-departures and COVID-19 information today. So just a little bit about viva-mundo.com. We today are here to help students on the way to the next part of international travel in their life. So if you are looking for visa degrees, options, applications, we are the go-to for that. Now, today we are using Zoom as the presentation template, and please can you ask any questions. If you are welcome to ask any questions throughout the whole webinar, but in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen and not the chat, that would be perfect. And if you are watching on Facebook Live, please do register to the webinar, and then we'll be able to continue our webinar. Right, okay, I'm going to send this over to you, Benjamin, and please do continue.
Great. So thanks a lot, everybody, for joining me today on the webinar. My name is Ben. I work in the International Admissions Office at Audencia Business School. So the presentation that I'm giving today is really kind of based off of our pre-departure presentation that we give to students who are getting ready to come and to study with us here in France. But I also kind of wanted to add some elements to it that really kind of address the situation that we're living with today in response to COVID-19. So some of the elements you'll see, I'll give a short introduction. Once I start talking about locations, we'll talk about some of those differences. We'll get to some of the programs, but I'll try to concentrate a little bit more on the effects of COVID on these types of elements and try to leave as much time as possible for questions and answers at the end. So before we begin, I did just want to give a little bit of a general idea of who we are, just to introduce us to anybody who doesn't yet know us. We are a business school. We do master's degrees in various areas dealing with business and management. You can see some of those here. We're more than 100 years old, and we're well ranked throughout the world, both nationally and internationally. We also have all three major international accreditations, EQUIS, AACSB, and AMBA, just so that you can be sure that the degrees that you're earning with us are recognized throughout the world, and we're among the top 1% of business schools that have all three major international accreditations. You can see here some of our rankings that also attest to the quality of the education that we provide. Typically, we're found in the top 100 business schools in the world, typically somewhere between 40 and 80 in Europe, and then normally in the top 20 in France, number 6 in France. So now we're down to a little bit more about the breakdown and the demographics of the students that are studying with us. We have about 5,000 students in total. Many of our students are coming from outside of France. You can see we have a large cohort of international students, and I think for our international students, understanding a little bit about the effects of COVID on the studies at Audencia is particularly important. So now I'd like to move on a little bit to what's new for September. So a couple of the things that you can already start preparing for, things like the visa process. So, many consulates and embassies around the world are already open and receiving French visa applications for our students that have been registered onto our programs. For some places, they will be opening starting tomorrow, July 1st, and other ones will not be opening or will have to adjust the types of visa processes that we have depending on local regulations and whether there's a sort of lockdown period. So the best advice that I can give you in terms of this is to check on the embassy or consulate website, the French embassy or consulate website that serves your region, to see how they are adjusting to this particular situation. Some might be, getting documents electronically or being able to sort of do interviews from a distance, but you'll definitely want to check to see what the procedure is for each region because it can vary depending on those local regulations. In terms of travel, so starting tomorrow, international travel is being opened up into the European Union for certain countries. I believe it's a list of 15, but this list will constantly evolve according to the situation. So you can check to see if you are eligible for that type of travel, and that can help you to be informed as to what types of delivery for the programs you would like to have, if it's going to be more online or more on site. So of course, for people who can join us, we're going to be able to welcome you on site. But for others, not only could there be an issue with being able to travel, just with visa or open borders, but also even if your country is able to travel to France, you may end up seeing that there are fewer flights that can be taken, and that can cause a bit of an issue as well. So you'll want to take a look at that, and that could have an effect on the type of delivery method that you're going to want to choose for your program. So we'll talk a little bit about the different scenario that we have with the delivery methods for the program, but I would just invite people for these first 2 points to, one, take a look at the French Embassy website to see how they're dealing with these visa procedures. And in addition to that, take into consideration the amount of time that you'll need to apply for these visas, because in every other year in the past, it can take anywhere from 4 to even 8 weeks to get through this entire visa process. It's nothing that is particularly difficult, but it does take a long time to do. And so you'll want to take that into account when you're planning for your studies. And then in addition to that, you will also want to check out what types of travel options you have, as that may have an effect on your ability to come and join us in September. Now, another thing that you'll want to keep in mind is about health insurance. So here in France, we have a national health insurance, and you will need to pay a nominal fee in order to be able to participate in that. So it's 98 euros per year that you will be donating in order to be able to participate in that national healthcare plan. But you may also want to check to see if there are additional visa requirements or insurance requirements in order to get these visas. So there may be an additional travel insurance requirement that will need to cover you from the time that you leave your home country until you are signed up for that national healthcare plan here when you arrive. So that's an additional concern that you'll want to have. So I did just want to let everybody know, though, that you are covered by a national healthcare service, and as a student, you get to benefit from all of the services that are provided by that plan. So I think one of the big elements to talk about when we're talking about Audencia in particular is the type of services that we provide outside of the classroom. So we do provide a lot of career counseling, a lot of career services support, and I think that it's something that is really important when we're talking about our programs. And there is an effect that this has on what you'll be doing during your studies. So, our career services department deals with a variety of different things, including, keeping our alumni network and helping to partner with businesses so that our students are going to be able to find the employment that's right for them after graduation. They have a great placement rate. We have over 90% of our students that are placed within 2 months of graduation, and you can see that there are over 17,000 job offers that are sent directly to us every year. And typically we have about 2,000 of our students who are searching for employment at any time. So, the amount of internship offers versus the amount of people that we have looking for employment is a quite good ratio. And the career services department gives a lot of different services that includes things like career counseling. And so I think that's one thing that we'll want to talk about, and here are a few of the different businesses that we are working with. But I think what's new for September is the move online for these types of services. So we'll continue to provide this type of support on site for people that will be joining us on campus in September. But one thing that we learned about, during the earlier phase of the pandemic, particularly between March and May, when the campus was closed down because of its lockdown situation in France, was we learned to move these services online so that we could help our students no matter where they are in the world, and no matter what sort of context we find ourselves in terms of a lockdown situation. So I do just want to let you know that a lot of these services, like the employment fairs that can now be held online, or these career counseling meetings that you can have with our colleagues, are still going to be maintained. These services are not going to be just sort of put by the wayside, because we feel as though it's just as important as what you're doing inside the classroom. We really want you to focus on employment after graduation, and our career services department does a lot of great work to support our students. So we want to make sure that, just as much as we give options to students who maybe want to study online, we also want to put these services online for our students so that they can meet with our counselors. And these are people who used to work as headhunters or used to work in HR departments for different large businesses, so they really have a lot of information and a lot of great advice that they can give to students, and that's why I'm happy that they're able to make that move online. In terms of the locations, so we are located in Nantes. We have several different campuses. These campuses are currently open to staff, and we'll be opening them in August to students. And this may have an effect on when you're choosing sort of housing. You'll want to take a look at where the majority of your classes are going to be held. Typically, you're going to be on one site, but you may have a couple of classes here or there that might be on another campus. The good thing is that these aren't hours and hours apart. I think it's about 30 minutes door to door to get from any one of the campuses to another. And we are located in Nantes, which is in the west coast of France. We're about 2 hours southwest of Paris by train. And we're well known for sort of the quality of life and our sort of international environment. There's a great student dynamic because we're a very large student city. We're probably the largest student city just outside of Paris. So we're very well known for research centers and universities, and we have a lot of international students that are studying with us in the city. And in terms of the demographics, you can see here that we do have a lot of students in comparison to the total number of inhabitants that we have in the city. We're the 6th largest city in France. And there's sort of a few things that you'll want to keep in mind when you're coming to Nantes. Sort of some of these changes that have happened since COVID has been coming through. So, social distancing is one of these areas that you'll want to pay attention to. I'm sure everybody is informed about this in some way or another, but really kind of keeping in mind that you want to keep 1 meter away from other people. And in fact, in some businesses or some establishments, they may require you to keep that distance. There may be lines that are marked on the ground that tell you how far apart you should be keeping when you're queuing up. And they may ask you to wear a mask inside of a business. So masks are not required when you're just kind of walking around outside, but there may be certain establishments that are going to require you to put on a mask before going inside. And these are sort of cloth masks. They're readily available in different businesses, or even at the school. We'll have stocks of masks that people can buy in case they don't have one, or if they want one. But I think it's important to note that in certain establishments, you'll want to have that mask ready in case they do require you to go in. And this also includes hand hygiene. A lot of places will have sanitizing gel that will be available. And they'll ask you to sanitize your hands before you come in to the business, just to make sure that they are doing the best that they can in order to limit the amount of the spread of the disease. And I think we'll talk about how we are sort of implementing all of these different techniques at the campus as well. And just a little bit about us, we are known in Nantes for our innovation. And as well as an economic hub. So I guess this kind of links back to the whole idea about career services and the types of approaches that we have to business education, and thinking about where you're going to be studying, with which school you're going to be studying, which program is going to be right for you, is really meant to set up graduation. So I think that all of these elements are important when you're deciding where you're going to be. And this hasn't changed. We still have great activity here in Nantes. I think a lot of these businesses are adjusting by, moving on to different remote work opportunities. And we're seeing sort of a shift in the way that businesses are adapting to this and more accepting of these online methods of doing work, and seeing productivity, continue when these proper, remote work policies are put into place. So I think that this is something to keep in mind as well, that COVID-19 has not only sort of changed the way that we're delivering education in terms of the types of tools that we're using, but I think it also changes the way that we're approaching business education and the skills that we're teaching to students. Because in order to be able to work with these types of innovative and productive businesses, a lot of them are going to be adopting these new skills that employ remote working techniques that some people may not be as familiar with. So we will be also incorporating these ideas of the use of these tools in the classroom environment, so that students will be well prepared for this type of work after graduation. We are also a green capital, and you'll see here in this slide we have our light rail system, our tram system. We also have lots of different buses. and it's very easy to get around, in particular with cycle paths. And this is one of the things that you'll want to keep in mind when you're preparing to arrive in September. So, Nantes has about 800,000 inhabitants. It is the sixth largest city in France, but what's nice about it is that it's a very condensed city. There's a very condensed city center where some of our students choose to live, and the university district where we are located, where Audencia is located, is about 15 minutes using light rail or buses or any of those systems. Now, with public transport, that has changed as well. And this will be one of those instances where, in order to be able to use public transport, they will ask you to put on a mask, and they will ask you to keep that 1 meter of distance. In fact, some seats are going to be blocked out, and they're going to ask that you don't use them because of the propagation of the disease. Now, we have been seeing that the use of public transport has there are definitely fewer people that are using it. So this is not the type of very closed spaces with lots and lots of people. I mean, you are able to keep that 1 meter of distance using public transport, but a lot of the students that we're talking to are maybe considering using alternative methods of transport. And I think one of the nice things about living in Nantes as well and being in this sort of green city is the fact that the use of bicycles is very prevalent. And in fact, with the same sort of card that you use to use buses or to use trams, there are these setups for bikes where you can use that same card in order to like rent a bike for a certain period of time. You can have a monthly subscription that will allow you to use a bike for up to 30 minutes for free, and you just basically pick it up from one spot and you drop it off in another. And both in the city center and in the university districts, we have different places where you can both pick up and drop off those bikes, or some students are considering investing in their own or any sort of other alternative mode of transport. And I mean, just to kind of give you an idea of, even at the very worst case scenario, let's say you're not going to be biking or using anything with wheels, you're just going to be walking from the city center to the university district. It still takes about 30-35 minutes door to door. And so, these are things to consider in terms of the quality of life, but they're things that you're going to want to think about when you're considering your budget and how you're going to be, getting to class and the types of transport that you'll use. So just to kind of give you a heads up, it has changed if you're going to be using buses or trams. It's not at any sort of heavy capacity, so you can respect social distancing norms. But many of our students are choosing alternative methods, including bikes, and to let you know that there is this opportunity to be able to have a monthly service where you can basically pick up and drop off bikes where you'd like to. Here's the list of programs. I'm not going to go into them, but I think what's important to know is what's going to happen with programs for people who have applied, who have accepted, and who are planning to come in September. So like I said, the campus will be opening to students in August. We're already finished with adapting all the different classroom environments so that they respect these sanitary requirements or sanitary policies that we have at Audencia, including, allowing students to stay 1 meter apart. So, we will be opening our campus in September. That is the plan that we have, and we've already adjusted the classrooms so that we can welcome the students who wish to join our programs there. And so you'll see that we have seats that are further apart. That way, you can maintain that 1 meter of distance between you. In the classroom environment. Like I said, we'll have masks that are available for purchase. If you forgot yours at home and you feel more comfortable with it, you'll still be able to get those. We'll have hand sanitizing gel throughout the school so that you'll be able to clean your hands, or just going to the bathroom and washing your hands. And we'll also have certain entryways and exit ways that we will indicate in order to sort of alleviate any sort of congestion that you can have in a hallway. So already we've made these changes, but I think it's also important to note that we have alternative methods of program delivery depending on your situation and your choices. So if you want to come in September, and you can come in September, we're ready to welcome you. We're ready to open like we have for decades and decades before, but we do realize that there are many other issues that may come up in the meantime and may alter how you're going to be able to do your program, or if you're going to be able to do your program. So we've got the classic traditional method in classroom as we've done, for so many years. But for people who, let's say, are not able to get their visa on time, we will have a parallel track for many of our programs that you'll be able to follow that program online until at a later date you can join us in the classroom. So, the same sort of topics, the same sort of projects, and the same sort of teaching will be happening, but we will also be providing that on an online platform so that students will be able to continue their studies until they're able to arrive with us, and then they can handle any sort of issues that might come up with trouble finding a flight or getting visas, or even just sort of personal issues that you may want to finish up before coming to France. All of that is the reason why we've set up for many of our programs this opportunity to be able to join us at a later date if you're not able to arrive when the program begins in September. Alternatively, for somebody who wants to go completely online, that would be an additional option that would be available. Even if people are able to travel, we do realize that it could be a pretty scary time. Different things are happening. You might have family that you might need to take care of. You might have additional concerns that you still need to take care of before you can arrive. So we also leave open the opportunity to be able to do a full semester and then be able to come and join us at a later date when you're able to do that. So just to kind of clarify, we have the same traditional method that will be available, and that's what we're currently planning. It's set to be start in September, just like we always have, basically. And if you would like to do that, if you can do that, that is going to be an option that is available to you. Now, in parallel to that, we will offer these online options that are going to be pretty much the same thing that you're doing in the classroom. The whole idea is that somebody should be able to join at any point in time after a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and they can then join the program at a later date, or they can choose to do an online option if they want. And that's going to be up to you, and you'll be able to communicate that with your coordinator. So we'll probably have maybe some questions on that a little bit later, but hopefully that kind of clarifies what's going on with the delivery methods for the programs. I think it's important to also note the activities that are going to be going on at school, because student life is a big part of the experience of being in Audencia, and we have a lot of clubs and associations that are available at Audencia. But we're going to have to work with them in a few different ways, because now groupings, you can only have certain numbers of people in a group in order to be able to respect those social distancing norms. So I think a lot of these groups are going to be moving their activities online. And in particular, I can give a couple of different ways that these types of services and student life points are going to be affected. So one of them is, outside of the student associations, we've got housing, because that's a big part of student life. Where are you going to be living? And that's going to be continuing just as it has. Luckily, we already have this online platform where registered students are going to be able to go on and choose where they would like to live based on the offerings that are available. Like I said, you can choose to live closer to the university district. You can choose to live closer to the city center if you'd like something that's a little bit more dynamic. But we have an online housing platform where people are going to be able to choose based on location, based on the facilities, based on pricing, and that will continue to happen. This is the type of budget that you're going to want to consider. This is traditionally what students have been estimating in their student budget. But now I think another point to talk about is sort of the student associations and how they've been adapted. So this is our international connections team. Basically, they are there in order to facilitate the exchanges between our French students and our international students. And a lot of times that has been, going out and visiting different places, doing weekend excursions, or organizing these different meeting places where you'll be able to interact with people. And one of the great things is that they have really been adapting in order to be able to continue to provide these types of services, but to maintain sort of social distancing. So I can give you an example of the way that they were helping out when we were in the lockdown situation. So, this was an unanticipated situation. I think for everybody this year, we had people who are already in their programs who are coming from around the world, who find themselves in a very, it's a very scary situation to be far from home, to be an unfamiliar environment. And so one of the great things that our international connections team was doing was really just to check up with all of our international students, make sure that they were healthy, that they had all the information that they needed, if they needed any help with the logistics of traveling back home. So I think that this is just an example of the way that these associations are adapting in order to be able to support our international students. So I think that that was one good point to kind of keep in mind. So this is the normal application process. This is where people can go and find our programs. They can apply for the program, do an interview for that program, and then when they can expect the different results. Now, with registration deadlines, normally when we have an offer of admissions that's sent to a student, there is a registration deadline that's indicated on the enrollment contract. It's usually a 2-week offer, so students can decide whether they will be registering on the program and if they'd like to accept the offer. And typically they have 2 weeks in order to be able to make those types of decisions. Now, as the situation becomes very, it's changing all the time, you have to remain flexible with that. So what we're also doing is we're extending deadlines for students that receive admissions, and they can always decide to request a deadline extension. Now, these deadline extensions are up for review. And so we have to make sure that we have enough places that are available in the program in order to be able to finally, allow that person to attend. But in those cases, what a student does is just contacts us and asks for a registration deadline for a certain date. We put that up for review. And I think in very, very few cases have we had any sort of refusal. It's really been, quite open, and we try to make that effort so that students are going to be able to register at the time that's right for them, and that you can really kind of get everything in order and make the decision that corresponds to your situation. An additional thing to remember about application and registration is about the program requirements. So for some of our programs, we have had a GMAT requirement, and that has been taken off. So students will not be expected to bring those GMAT requirements, with the exception of one program, which is going to be our MBA program. Now, that program will allow students to have time from the beginning of the program to submit that test. There won't be any sort of minimum that needs to be submitted, but it is a requirement for accreditations and rankings. So for that one program in particular, we will be asking students to still submit their GMAT exam. For the other ones, we have been able to sort of lift that additional requirements because of so many different lockdowns around the world. And just recently, GMAT has put their tests online for certain zones, but it's not really available to all zones. So we want to make sure that all students are going to have as much access to the programs as we can. Same thing with English test requirements. In many cases, you can submit that test later, and we also accept the online test Duolingo. So there's the traditional exams of TOEFL, TOEIC, and IELTS that are accepted. But in addition to that, we'll also have online tests that you'll be able to submit if your program requires an English test, and almost all the programs will. Here's our contact information. I did want to leave most of the time for any sort of questions. I know a lot of this information is new, and I do just want to be available to address any of your concerns, because we're all living in different circumstances and situations, and of course I don't have all the information, but I do want to leave as much time so that we can have a discussion and see what your concerns are and how we can help you with that. But if you are not able to ask any of those questions today, you can always contact us at international@audencia.com.
Okay, thank you so much, Benjamin. We do have one question, a few questions actually in the Q&A. There's just one question from Alice. Do you help the students with the visa procedures as well?
So we help the students with everything that is like documentation or sort of general information about where to go in order to do the visa process. It is something that needs to be done individually. This goes through, a government institution, and they have their own processes. The student does have to apply for that visa and do any of those requirements. And so that's why, at the very beginning, when I was talking about checking with the French embassy website, that's going to be the best place to get the information, because not only can it vary from country to country and region to region, especially with any sort of issues that may be happening locally with COVID. But on top of that, there may be additional concerns as well. Maybe they will have a difference in the process, or maybe it will evolve over time as we get closer to the beginning of courses. You know, they may have additional requirements for insurance and things like that. So we're always available in case you have questions about responses that you get. We're always there to sort of help and counsel. And like I said, we provide all the documentation and sort of the standard procedure of how to go through the visa process, but it's not as though we will be applying for that student visa for any of our registered students, if that makes sense. For information, we're there to provide you with the documentation that you need, but we cannot, unfortunately, do that visa process for you.
Okay, and there is another question. I am Brazilian and I really want to make an exchange in January 2021 in France. Do you think it will be possible?
So one, you have to consider whether your school is linked with us in an exchange agreement. So that has to be established first, because there are many schools all around the world, and we do have many partners in Brazil, for example, but you want to make sure that you're currently in one of those schools where you can do an exchange agreement. So assuming that you are, we're continuing to do these types of exchanges. The thing is that with January 2021, nobody really knows what's going to happen between now and then. So let's say that the current official sort of position on this is that, yes, we're wanting to welcome our students in January. We're ready. We'll have that process that's available to you, but we may need to keep in mind that there could be some sort of alteration between now and then that will alter the delivery method, for example. So for some of our students that are not going to be able to join us in September, we're going to be providing these sorts of online courses that they'll be able to do that imitates what we're doing in the classroom environment. And I expect we'll be doing the same thing in January. In fact, I think that this is going to be sort of a more sustainable way of adjusting to these types of situations. So I think we'll always have that option that's going to be available. After, you'll want to check with your school just to make sure that it's an option for your major or for your degree type. Make sure that we have that agreement that's set up so that there will be this mutual recognition of the courses that you could possibly take. You can sign up for the courses and we'll be in contact with you to let you know about any sort of evolutions that would happen in the delivery method in the meantime. So I hate to kind of sidestep that question, but many times when we do have these plans, we'll have the plan A, and then we'll often set up, 3 different alternative scenarios in case something happens in the meantime that we would have to adjust to the different situations. So that's kind of the plan that we have set up. Yes, we would love to welcome you in January, keeping in mind that things could change in the meantime, and we may need to adopt more of this online learning or distance learning methods, depending on what that situation may be.
Great. There is just one more final question that does read, how, if I was to study at your university, will Brexit be an issue?
So I don't see Brexit as being a particular issue for most of our programs. So we do have one very special program that's a trilingual program. They go to Spain, to the UK, and then they study in France, all in 1 year. So for somebody who is an EU citizen, they may need to apply for a student visa to go to the UK. We still don't know about how this is going to turn out. We don't anticipate that there's going to be any drastic changes. So we're hoping that, this will continue to work much in the same way that it has in the past. But there may be additional visa requirements. In any case, for many places, if you needed to apply for a student visa to come to the EU, you would also need to apply for a student visa to go to the UK in any case. So those will be the same. It's just now that maybe for a lot of our EU citizens, there may be this additional concern about doing any sort of exchange period in the UK. So those are the main points that I see as being particular issues with Brexit. But other than that, I don't see much what other sort of effects that could have.
Okay, is there any last words that you want to give, advice or anything else, Ben?
No, just that we're here. You can set up info calls with us. You can send us emails. You can contact us on Skype. So we're really here to answer any sort of questions. And I know there are tons of different questions that can come up, and they'll continue to come up, and things will change as time goes on. So please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. We really want to try to let you know all of the information that we have so that you can make the best choices for the future.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the information on your webinar, and thank you for a great presentation. Thank you guys for attending and asking some really interesting questions. Please do check out viva-mundo.com and sign up to our newsletter to find out more. And yeah, that's it for me today. Have a great day, guys. Bye.